Hey, it's Phil, and welcome on the Habit Bootcamps podcast, where I interview entrepreneurs and coaches about their mindset shifts and habits. In this episode, I interview Peter Schwartz, who is an NLP practitioner and hypnotherapist. And in this episode, we talked about how to design your life and structure your mind, the power of beliefs, how to process information, what NLP is and how it works, some of his favorite morning routines, and the power of habits. Now, as always, let me know what you've gotten out of this week's episode by dropping a comment below and enjoy the podcast. Hey, Peter, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Now, before this call, you told me a story that you asked my first question that I ask a lot of people to some guests. And my first question often is, how would other people describe you?
Yes.
What kind of responses did you get, and how did it feel to hear those responses?
Well, as I was telling you, I had the opportunity to ask my friends directly. We were at a little bit of a celebration, and it felt. I got some really sincere, honest answers from my friends, and it felt good. He's a natural leader. He's a bit cocky, but it works for his personality. What else did they say? He's the kind of person that if you're around him, he'll uplift you and he'll help you break out of your shell. So hearing those things from your friends is deeply, deeply rewarding. And it really fills you up emotionally and nourishes you in that way. But I will say the caveat, as I told you as well, is they were slightly drunk. They were slightly drunk when this happened. You know, people get a little more lovey-dovey when they've had a couple of drinks in them.
What answers had you expected?
I didn't know, dude. I had no idea. So, but yeah, it definitely surprised me. And at least it told me I was on the right track. So,
when was your first step on the right path or on the right track? When did you made your first major mindset shift in your life, you feel?
when I crashed and burned epically and totally burned all my bridges and got to the lowest point in my life, that caused me to be open-minded enough to start asking questions, to start realizing that I don't have all the answers. And it was because I reached that low point that I was willing to try new things.
Do you have any idea why you reached the low point in life? What happened?
Lots of things, a great many things. But I think for me, it was really identity crisis. Not knowing who I wanted to be as a man, not knowing what it meant to be a man, not knowing what to do with my life. And for me, they've studied this in psychology. Everybody goes through identity formation, but the way I think I did it, I wasn't aware that it was happening. So I just felt all this anxiety and depression and all this confusion because I just didn't know how to verbalize it. I didn't understand that what I was going through was regular and that everybody is looking for their calling in life, even if they're not realizing it. Excuse me. Everybody has that within them, that search for their deepest reason for being. And I was following the path that had been laid out for me by my parents, by schools, by everybody. You go to high school, you go to college, and for whatever reason, I was lucky enough to be terrible at following somebody else's plan. The only plan I've ever been good at is following my passions.
So was it willingly or was it incompetence?
It was a willing incompetence. It was a willing incompetence. Yes. And then through that incompetence, even if it's willing, even if probably people right now listening to this, they know there are times, areas, and places where they can do more, be more, share more, give more. Not because they should, but because that's the person that they want to be. And when you're not living up to your ideal of who you want to be, you start to devalue yourself. Joe Rogan says, be the hero of your own story, right? So in college, even though I was willingly being incompetent and I knew that I was capable of more, I had suffered tremendous, tremendous blows to my self-esteem, and my self-image crumbled. And the way I was looking at myself, it was just very difficult for me to value myself. One of the questions in your interview thing was, what would the advice you would give your younger self be? Mm-hmm. And it would be, don't wait until you're perfect, which will never happen, right? Don't wait until you're perfect to start valuing yourself. Realize now, wherever you are in your journey, that you're wanted, that you're loved, that you're worthy as you grow and progress, right? Because
if you don't know where you are and you don't know where you want to go, how can
yes.
people know what their first step should be?
If you don't know where you are and you don't know, they should know where they are. That's the first step, right? It sounds like Jordan Peterson.
He's one of my influences, definitely, but it also reminds me of the work by Joseph Campbell of leaving your tribe, leaving familiar ground. But you're going from familiar ground to unfamiliar ground, but you don't know which step to take or which direction to head, because you don't even have that future vision of yourself. So for people who feel stuck in their tribe, in their familiar ground, what advice would you give to people who want to start that heroes or heroine journey?
Well, start asking the question. Start asking the question and absolutely refuse to let anybody else answer it for you. Okay, I mean, get advice for sure. Humble yourself and ask for help. But look to guys like Jordan Peterson. Look to guys like Joseph Campbell. Enrich yourself. You have to start asking better questions. Kim Kardashian is not going to teach you how to live a life. And if you're only feeding yourself that type of material, you're not going to develop the richness of spirit, psychology, habits, the types of things that are going to make your life deeply meaningful. If you don't know what step to take any step and you'll know if it's leading you in the right direction. Joseph Campbell says, follow your bliss and all the doors will open up to you. He also says that the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. For me, it was both. My greatest fears and my greatest passions have molded me, sculpted me, and taken me down this journey.
Oftentimes that self-esteem is tied to what other people think of us, but then we want to choose something that is purely our own or authentic. So often that first step doesn't have to be the perfect step, but a step that we say, like, I'm going to take responsibility. I'm going to take control of my life and just try something. But in my case, and with a lot of people, it comes from a deep pit of anxiety and burnout and depression, and burn the bridges and say, like, fuck it. You know, people and the world is not giving me what I want. So fuck it, man. I might as well just do that. So you have belief in it, but you use that frustration as a way to express yourself and try something out because you feel like you have nothing to lose anymore because you're at the lowest point.
Yep. That's the greatest gift anybody can get to, is when they realize they've hit that low point and they lose all their reasons, all their excuses, right? When you've had your ego shattered completely, there's nothing holding you back anymore. Typically, I find people come to personal development either from desperation, that I'm sick and tired of saying I'm going to get to the gym and not doing it. Year by year by year, I'm going to have abs this year. I'm going to look good in my bathing suit this year, right? And you're in front of the refrigerator in the middle of the night, eating standing up, right? How did I even get here, right? So there's something going on that you don't have awareness how to influence yourself. You need to learn.
Yeah, and it's sometimes like an external perspective that when I was quitting certain addictions, bad habits, and wanted to do a change, it was almost like a third person view of myself, who was like a camera in the room looking at myself. For sure. And then you're watching yourself like, dude, you're better than this, man. Why are you still doing this? You know it for like years. You have this gut feeling that you have to do something. You know, it's just excuses. You're bullshitting yourself, and you have that. You're in yourself, but you're also looking at yourself and seeing like, this is my future I'm seeing. I'm going to switch the channel, or these characters got to change in this TV show because this is really depressing to watch.
Yeah. And that's a great metaphor for it, is that this TV show sucks. Okay. And you're the author of the show, you're the director, and you're the actor. So if your life is, you know, the Navy had this amazing commercial and you could tell it was targeted for young men. You know, because they had that amazing music, right? And the chopper comes in and the Navy SEALs pop down out of the thing and they go through. And you remember James Earl Jones?
He's the voice of Darth Vader, right?
Yes. So he comes on. I can't do his voice, but it's this beautiful, rich, deep voice, right? And he goes, if somebody wrote a book about your life, would anybody want to read it? And I so loved the question, but it's the wrong question. It's not would anybody want to read it. Would you read it? Is your life interesting to you? You know, is what you're doing, like today, I used to have a hard time waking up in the morning, okay? I'd set my alarm. I would set 15 alarms on this phone, on my watch. I would set the stereo. The whole apartment would be up, the neighborhood, the dogs are howling, right? The police wake up, you know, I'm good. I'm asleep. when there was something meaningful for me, like this interview. I woke up early because I was excited to do this. It means something to me to have these conversations, right?
It's interesting that you say that, by the way, because personally, I also find like follow your passion. I say follow your curiosity. And if you find something that you're curious in, often has meaning to you. And even if it doesn't succeed, you will find meaning out of that. So oftentimes follow your curiosity and make a choice and find meaning in the thing, or find meaning with the thing that happened with you taking that action and giving you some feedback. So you will find meaning anyway. But if you don't express or try something else, you won't find something new. So you won't be able to find new meaning in something.
100%. And de-escalate failure. Like it's okay. You're not going to get it right the first time. You're not going to get it right the first 10 times. It's like, it's not a big deal. The faster you can be okay with being wrong, the faster you're going to learn to create that life, right? People catastrophize these things so much. And then you find the people who are being really... Are you a fan of Tim Ferriss at all?
Yeah.
Yeah? Of course you are.
I think we have a lot of things in common, yeah.
So, yeah. So did you... His new book, Tools of the Titans, and he's got a new one that just came out too. That book is just a buffet of the habits of successful people, right? And these people, one of the skills that they have is they categorize, I'm sorry, that's not it. They're very good at thinking. They're strategic about how they think. And you have to realize that the way you think is a tool. What's that quote? Your mind is an excellent servant, but a terrible master, right? So if instead of when you do an activity and it's quote unquote failure, right? If you can, like the most successful people, immediately switch that around so you just learn from it, detach all emotion from it, and then move on quickly, you're propelling yourself into success really fast. Whereas most people, I don't know if this is true for you, but most people never start. And most people never give themselves permission to ask, what is an incredible life on my terms? Like, what does that mean to you to live an incredible life? What is an incredible...
And that's also where the two things meet sometimes. Self-development is about taking responsibility, and oftentimes spirituality has to do with not attaching yourself to the result. So you can focus on the journey, focus on the process, take responsibility, but not be attached to having it be a certain way, because it can prevent people from even starting, procrastination, or it can prevent people of feeling satisfied or even taking enough action because they have that perfectionism that they want the result to be a certain way.
I'm 100% guilty of that. Everything that we're talking about, like I've done it. I still do it. I had one personal development coach one time tell me, I'm not teaching this stuff for you. I teach it for me, because when I do this, I'm reminding myself of these tools. These are all skills that you get good at. And the other thing is, I think people need to double down on their self-belief. I think you really have to start asking, what would it be like if I had that type of unstoppable self-belief? Not that you have to be that person all the time, but you need that as a tool. You need to be able to drop into that mode. And people haven't developed that skill, that if you think about who would you be if all of your fears, all of your insecurities, all of those were gone, and you begin to imagine yourself that way, how would you look? How would you be thinking? How would you move through the world? What you're doing is physically creating the neurology inside your brain of self-belief, right? What would it be like if things were easy? And then you have to realize we live in the most abundant time on the planet. There's no reason why you cannot make lots of money doing exactly what you love right now. There are 16-year-olds. Sorry.
Yeah, those things demand perseverance, thinking long-term, delaying gratification, having patience, being grateful, not comparing yourself with other people, all those things which due to our current society and social media and instant gratification and stimuli is not being promoted. It's like fast pill now, distraction, lack of focus, but all these things that you need are increasingly more difficult to guard and protect in this ever increasing world of more choices and more stimuli and distractions.
Sure. So our computers are getting faster, right? They're getting more convenient. They're becoming better at manipulating your consciousness, right? And we're getting worse at it. We've forgotten what silence is like inside, and we're uncomfortable with it, And it's nice. I'm guilty of it too, dude. Every time my cell phone goes off, I'm like, who loves me? Let me see. That's right. Tell me, like I want to know, but I think to me, there's 3 key lessons. And that's what this practice is about for me, is promoting these 3 understandings. One is purpose. And I struggle with how to communicate this. I'm learning to refine this message a little bit. Because the positive psychologist will tell you, as long as you find meaning in what you're doing, that's enough, okay? My take on it is, I really think that you're a unique individual with unique values, with unique passions, unique genetics, that of the 7 billion people on this planet, no single individual has your unique expression, your unique history. And to me, that means your gift is authentic. And what you can bring to the world, only you can bring to the world, right? So I want to help people enrich and develop and deepen that gift, right? And find a way in which they're living their life so that they're deeply, deeply fulfilled on a regular basis. And the vast majority of people, if you open your eyes and you walk around the street, they're not living that way. But that's here for all of us. Right, is a deep reason for being that brings us deeply alive in the world.
It's sometimes also a paradox, because lack of self-belief prevents you from taking action, and
Yes.
you don't take action because you don't have a lot of self-belief. So
Yes.
in that stage of leaving your familiar ground to cultivate that self-belief when you have no reference experiences is really difficult.
Yes.
The book Psycho-Cybernetics talks about it, about your self-esteem or self-belief can only be a match to what you're capable of believing. So do people then act like they're all like that, or just take action? Or what are some tips that you have about it?
I've seen incredible breakthrough and transformation. I've seen change happen in an instant. I've seen it in 15 minutes, and I've seen people struggle for years. It doesn't matter. As long as you aim your mind where you want to go and consistently make, the biggest habit, progress over perfection, right? You take that inch by inch victory. I think one of your questions was, how do you celebrate, or how do you deal with success? I celebrate it, but I celebrate minor success. After this interview, this was an amazing success. Okay. When I get to the gym today, that's going to be an amazing success for me. And I'm going to celebrate every single, this is the correct amount of water I need to drink. I'm going to celebrate that. You know what I'm saying? And people wonder why I'm so happy. I get asked all the time, why are you so, well, because I'm winning and I'm celebrating the small things. Celebrate the small things, build incremental rewards. And then before you know it, you're going to be at a whole new level. Now, with that in mind, there are incredible transformations that can happen in an instant. And that's when we talk about belief, like the Roger Bannister effect, right? And I'll give you an example from my life. When I was 8 years old, I was
Roger Bannister is, by the way, the guy who ran the 100 meters or a mile under a certain...
I think it was a mile under 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept telling for years people that it was 5 minutes, because to me, a 5-minute mile was impossible, right? But no, it was 4 minutes. And then so for years, he didn't do it. Bannister visualized over and over and over and over achieving that goal, and then did it. And then everybody else did it, right? So I was testing for my black belt very young, and we had a cinder block at the end of the break, okay? And I've been working for this goal for years, man, for years, okay? And I idolized my instructors. These guys were my gods, So there's my black belt on the wall. It says my name, Peter Schwartz, okay? I look at it every day I come into the gym, which is a great habit to look at your goals every day, right? So I'm in there, I'm working on it, go through black belt testing, they blindfold me, I do all these breaks, all this stuff, right? Here we go. It's a time to break the brick, okay? And I knew, I had already decided that I couldn't break it. I didn't think I could do it. So in karate, we measure, right? I was Taekwondo, but that's kind of how you break. You measure, you go 1, 2, 3, you make your big Bruce Lee noise, and you smash through, right? So I measure 1, the brick is cold. It's like sharp. I can feel it cutting my knuckles. I haven't even hit it yet, 2, 3, and the brick hit me harder than I hit it, So my hand is stinging, And my martial arts instructor, do it again, right? So I tried 2-3 times. I don't break it. My hand is on fire at this point. And so I'm broken inside, man. There's my black belt on the wall. I'm holding back tears. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so my instructor, genius that he was, he goes, okay, this is what we're going to do for you. Your technique is perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to have you do the same break, but I'm going to make it more challenging. I'm going to blindfold you. And if you can break a board instead of a brick, I'm going to give you your black belt. Okay. So he takes my black belt off the wall, my goal, the thing that I want more than anything else in the world. And he wraps it around my eyes, right? Blinds me with my goal, right? So the only thing I can see is what I want. And then he has me go up to the brick, okay, to the board. And so I put my hand on it and I feel the wood. I've broken boards 1,000 times, okay? 1, 2, 3, right? So I smash through and then I hear chick, chick, chick. I hear the sound of the cinder block hit the floor, right? Pull the blindfold off and the cinder block with a board on top of it, right? With the hand that had been stinging before, okay? So for me, that was a complete, breakthrough. Obviously broke, but like paradigm shift. All of a sudden, I was aware of a certain capability, a power within you that wasn't there before. And you see this all the time. You see this with the placebo effect, right? You give people with anxiety, depression, whatever, you give them a placebo, you give them a reason to believe that you're about to start performing better in everything that you do. Bam. Next thing you know, you are, right? And this effect is in everything. This is that self-fulfilling prophecy notion, right? And I think the second part, we talked about purpose. The second part is your belief system. And to me, it's not about having a good belief or a bad belief. It's about having operational beliefs. Your Facebook, was he a friend? He's a follower. He asked a question about CBT, right? CBT, and I love that you have people asking that quality of question. That's incredible. That's incredible that people are that intellectually rigorous. He was asking about the evidence-based effectiveness of hypnosis versus CBT, right? And CBT is one of the, in my opinion, best therapies on the planet.
Because you're a hypnotherapist, right? For people who
I am a hypnotherapist, yes, and neurolinguistic programmer. And so CBT has evidence-based results for helping people with these different issues. Whereas a lot of people are still practicing therapies with zero evidence that they work, right? So CBT has this amazing thing. And what they do is they get you to look at your beliefs rationally, okay? My opinion on that one is I want you to be rational when it's useful, and I want you to be irrational when it's useful, okay? I want you to have an operational belief system, okay? So when, for example, I'm single at the moment. So if I'm in a situation and I see a woman that I want to meet, okay? If I'm rational about it, I can talk myself out of it. You know what I mean? For me, in that moment, my operational belief system has to be designed to get me to take action in that moment and show up and be able to connect with another human being, right? So I'm going to build a belief that makes it so that I feel really attractive in the presence of that woman, so that I feel really excited and curious about her when I meet her, right? So to me, it's about designing beliefs and having control over what type of thinking to use when. Realizing that your self-fulfilling prophecy is a real phenomenon that's been measured in psychology. We know that what you believe about yourself, what you believe about other people, what you believe about the world, not only influences your body. So when you have a belief, it sends a command to your body to feel a certain way, right? But it also limits what you see in the environment. Same example, I see this woman, I have a belief that says she won't like me, okay? Then my body language immediately shuts down. I've rejected myself before I can talk to her. My shoulders hump, whatever, right? My breathing gets shallow, okay? So now I'm sending a message to the environment that I do not want to talk to her, okay? Her body reads that, she responds, she sends me a message back. Right?
Some people maybe, but I'm playing advocate of the devil here, but maybe call it delusional sometimes, because if you can manipulate things or manage reality to your specific needs, isn't there a risk of becoming very selfish and egoistic?
Yes, there is. Absolutely. Yeah. And I've made mistakes. I've made mistakes. And that's the journey. You're going to fuck up. You're going to hurt people by accident. If you have a heart though, and you have empathy, you know, you correct, you come back, you apologize when you make a mistake, and you do everything you can to make it better. And you learn from that. For sure, I make a mistake, but yeah, delusion. When I talk about being operational, it's like the Buddha, right? The Buddha has one hand on the ground, grounded to reality, and one hand to heaven, okay? Up to that vision of what your life could be. You want both. You know what I mean? You want to be able to switch back. And I'm scientifically rigorous. I know how to evaluate studies. I know how to evaluate information, and I know how to be delusional. And you need to know how to do both, in my opinion.
Maybe you can explain a little bit for the listeners or viewers what NLP is all about. Some famous person who used NLP a lot was Tony Robbins.
Yeah, he's the most famous for sure. It's happening all the time. It's in every single influence course on the planet, even though it's not being called by that name. And I'm making sweeping generalizations here for sure. NLP started in the 1980s. Richard Bandler and John Grinder, the creators of it, were at USC, and they were interested because Bandler was a mathematician. And this is the key distinction about NLP versus other practices, okay? Mm-hmm. NLP looks at you as a process rather than a thing. So if you tell me, can you give me an example of a problem that you hear about a lot or an issue or something like that?
I have to be motivated before I start with the task.
I have to be motivated before I start with the task. Beautiful. Okay. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to put a little bit of a spin on it to illustrate my example. Okay. So commonly I might hear, I'm not a motivated person. Okay. So motivation is not something that you have or have not. It's more accurately the way that you said it. I have to be motivated before I start a task, right? That's talking about it as a process. So what these guys did is they went to go study 3 therapists in particular. They started with the 3 best therapists they could find. People who, clients would come to them who were stuck for years. Guys like Milton H. Erickson, the hypnotist, Virginia Satir, she was a systems therapist, and Fritz Perls, the Gestalt therapist. These are all brilliant minds, and they could get incredible results with people. And so they would sit there and they would study them as a process where everybody else would say, Virginia Satir is just that way. She has intuition, right? Milton Erickson is just a genius, which he was, right? But genius is a verb. Genius is something that you do. Excellence is a verb. So they started to study the process, and they looked at the language, and they had all 3 of these change workers who had completely different backgrounds had very, very similar processes. They all had an information gathering stage where they would find out how the client was, listen to my language here, creating and maintaining their problem. That those bad habits have to be maintained. And usually they're maintained subconsciously, but they're still being maintained. So they'd find out
how I sometimes look at NLP is that they look at the belief, they look at the system as a way of thinking, they take their hammer, they shatter it, they look at all the different pieces and then see how they connect, and then they try to reassemble them.
I think that's fair. Absolutely. I think that's absolutely fair. The only thing that I would add to that is, so if you're looking at cognitive restructuring there, or belief change, that's absolutely a fair way to look at it. There are other components of NLP as well. So if you look at modeling is a big piece of NLP. Mm-hmm. So if you're learning to become better at a skill, there are modeling tools in which you can elicit the belief systems of people who are exquisite at what you want to do. So you don't have to guess what the best beliefs are. Ask the people who are the best, and then borrow their psychology, try it on, notice what you get in the real world. The other thing is NLP brings a certain realization about your state of consciousness, that the way you feel is entirely controlled by your neurology. And NLP gives you tools to feel differently immediately. So Tony Robbins talks about conditioning your state and your emotions. Well, most people's emotional emotions are emotional habits.
And priming himself, right?
He does a lot of priming, yes. You can train your mind and body to live in exquisite states, happy, confident, motivated. What do you want to feel? And maybe that's just totally connected. Maybe it's what you have to decide, what are the ways of being in this world that really bring you alive? And then realize if you're not experiencing that, that's because you got some bad habits up here. That's all it is. It's just some bad thinking habits. So after they studied these individuals, they went on and studied other excellent professions, excellent salespeople, excellent negotiators, excellent athletes. And then they developed a series of tools that came out of that. But does that help with what?
Yeah, I want to introduce people who don't know what NLP is about, to give themselves an introduction to it. I know some other people who do NLP. And how do you look as an NLPer to investigating the past, dealing with the past, becoming aware of some things in the past? Are they not important? Are they important? Are they little important?
It's a great question. So I'll quote Tony Robbins here: biography does not equal destiny. So the most important thing to me is getting your neurology today into an optimal state. Okay. So oftentimes to me, I usually take a symptomatic approach. If I can get there symptomatically, so we take whatever the state is that's not being useful, the belief that's not being useful, and we can restructure that here, today, now without dwelling into the past, boom, that's what we're doing. There are instances where, because of the way your mind codes time and the way you know who you are is in reference to your memories, in reference to your experiences. So let's say you have a certain emotional challenge. It's sometimes useful to go back to that time and learn from a different perspective, so that we take a negative emotional charge out of that situation and allow you to look at it, like you mentioned earlier, as an observer, dispassionately. So you can learn everything you need to learn from that event, but you take all the emotional sting out of it, right? And then you carry that learning with you through time. This is a process developed by Tad James called timeline therapy. And you bring those learnings through your life up to the present moment, and then you go out into the future with the new beliefs in store. Because people get stuck and a negative event happened in their life, not because of the event. And if the event itself was bad enough, it's bad enough. You don't need to rehash it for the rest of your life, but it gets trapped in the physiology. The negative states get trapped in the physiology. And then we build beliefs based on the event about ourselves, about other people, about what situations mean. So the dealing with the past is not my priority. My priority is getting you into a good place here now and focusing on your future. Sometimes we do go back and work with things in the past. Yeah. But it's not, an NLP session is very rarely tell me about your childhood. Very, very rarely.
Because the impression could be that it's mostly about act like somebody else until that identity or that action becomes so ingrained in your system that you feel like that new person and you don't have to act anymore. You just are. Am I correct?
It's one way to look at it. And I think there's value in that approach. For example, when I was learning to teach Taekwondo, I had an instructor who was phenomenal. He was an incredible, incredible teacher. He got the class motivated. And I would try on his behaviors. So I would speak to the class in a similar way that he would. I would use his tonal patterns. I would practice doing things the way he would do them. And when I had learned the deeper reason for why what he was doing was working, I incorporated it into my own. As Bruce Lee said, incorporate what's useful and discard the rest. I don't think it's about becoming anybody else. I think it's about learning from other people and becoming the best version of yourself, integrating, synergizing that with which you are and bringing your own unique value to it.
And it was also in modeling. I checked out a great course by Eben Pagan and Wyatt Woodsmall, who was much into modeling, that it also depends on what kind of learning style you have. You have some people who just want to know the what, and people want to know the why, and people want to know the how, and some people want to know the what if, or some people are more audioly stimulated, visually stimulated, or with their body. It also depends on learning how you best learn and how you can best model people and learn faster and cultivate new beliefs.
100%. So you got me there. I'm not familiar with that model. But if it works, again, that's my favorite. You know, I'm familiar with Eben Pagan and all those guys, and they're very good at what they do. So I
Yeah,
think,
because a lot of things are now structured into modules to learn them the tools, and the tools are not crutches. The crutches are there to then just throw them away and learn how to walk. But first you use some crutches to at least understand it. It's the same thing when I did a Thai massage course. You had a lot of people who were
oh
from
man, Thai massage is the best.
uh, you had some people from Germany and Austria, and it's a bit of a cliche, but they're very structural. And they first want to know how everything is done, where every organ is.
Mhm.
And the teachers were like, no, it's the intention that counts. It just comes from the heart and be present, which is 100% true, of course. But I also first need to figure out the separate elements and then construct them. And then finally I can let go and express and focus more on other things. But I need to see how it connects first.
Sure.
Although I realize that the heart intention is even more important than being present.
Of course. Yeah, no, I was the same way. I was absolutely the same way. So it took me a long time before I started practicing. A long time. I totally, and as an interesting anecdote, Richard Bandler, the creator of NLP, when he talks about teaching NLP to Germans, because in Germany, there's modal operators of necessity in language are different than they are in English. So for example, there aren't a lot of you should do this or that, as I understand it, you know, so one must do this or one must do that, right? So it's interesting that you say that. But I was the same way, man. I wanted to know how all of the pieces fit together, especially in this field. You're helping people, right? You're in the helping people profession. And if you're in this field, it's because you care. So you want people to excel. I know, you know, there's no better feeling than when you're working with somebody and they get value out of what you're doing. It is by far the most rewarding thing on the planet. And so you're in this because you care about people. I wanted to know everything. And that was that perfectionism. It stopped me for a long time from actually getting out there and trying. Guess what? Getting out there and trying is how you learn. That's how you develop. That's how you become the person who can really help get people there. And I waited too long personally. And I've seen other people do that too.
Also because you mentor these people, and now we have access to so many amazing mentors or YouTube channels or books or Audible courses that we measure the place where we are at now with where those mentors are also. But they took a long way to be at the place where they are now. And we put that standard so high that we're just afraid to jump because we will never measure up, especially with our first jump, to how high all those people are already.
For sure. So for me, I'm going to be as good or better than Tony Robbins, as good or better than Richard Bandler before I open my practice. And that's a limiting belief, because if I'm not that good, then I'm not good enough to help people, right? And that belief prevented me for years from taking action, right? And you can see how this can affect every single area of everybody's life. You know, what is that life that you want to create for yourself, right? What is it? If you were to create an incredible life on your terms, what would that be? Give yourself permission to let go and fantasize with abandon about that, okay? And then realize that there are people who are living that life right now. And you can ask them how they did it. I mean, books are phenomenal. You know, every genius that's ever existed on the planet is in a book, and they're all on your phone. You know, if you want to make $1 billion, if you want to learn tantric sex and learn how to have a 4-hour orgasm, there's a book for that. You know, if you want to learn how to start a business, if you want to learn how to do absolutely anything, it's in a book. You know, it's on YouTube.
And that is a double-edged sword. Like, you can do it because everything is possible. You can't do it. Why? Because you want to do everything.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So then
100%.
especially in the beginning, like picking something and you're interested in marketing and making a business and you want to do Thai massage and you want to learn another language, etc. It's also interesting. But then to be able to just pick something, and you always lose out, but at least you go deep and you cultivate the skill. It's difficult sometimes because yes, you have so many options and possibilities, but also, yes, you have so many options and possibilities.
Right, for sure. But have you found that they start to collate at all for you? That by following these options and these passions, is there an underlying thread that they seem to be leading to?
I think most people have like a main story reflected back at them, whether they want to or not. And later then things connect and the puzzle connects and you see how they all led to one another. But
Sure.
this is what a lot of young people, I mean, man, now with Audible and all these tools, you can learn a lot faster. You can do the dishes, listen to an audiobook, go to the gym, even in your car.
For sure.
We weren't able to do that like 15 years ago. So we can learn a lot faster, but we're also exposed to so many different kind of influence, and it's all interesting. But we can be like a jack of all trades, so we can be a master or an expert. But to commit to something and say like, yes, I'm going to go for this and cut out all those other possibilities, it's a bit scary because you don't know if you made the right decision. So a lot of people are, and I've also, and I am also still guilty of that, by doing too many things at the same time, micromanaging and just being too curious.
Too curious. Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's the way you find out what's most rewarding for you. Again, I think the skill is in the repetition of what is a masterful life for me or for you. And then there's some skill and showing. You have to have a practice for this, and you have to show up to it on a regular basis. You know, in neuroscience, when you study people, like for example, in London, tell me if you heard about this study. They took taxi drivers. In London, it's notoriously difficult to be a taxi driver. And then when you put them in the fMRI, you look at the region of their brain that's associated with transportation, that's associated with navigation. And that area of the brain is physically stronger, larger, more myelinated, right? Which myelin is the fatty acid that coats a neuron and allows for faster connection speed, right? Than other areas of their brain. And if you develop a skill, you practice a skill, that area in your brain gets stronger. In fact, it's necessary for you to go develop a skill and be bad at it first so that your brain can send the resources there so that the next time you go back, all of a sudden you're better. Like, when did that happen? Well, it happened when your brain was growing and you were sleeping. Your brain was trying to calculate, how do I do this, right? And then it sends myelin into those neurons. And then what also happens is it takes myelin away from the neurons that aren't serving you. So if you change, let's say you're changing a habit, right? The second you put the new habit in my opinion, the best way to get rid of a bad habit is to create a better one. As soon as you create that better habit, the brain starts myelinating that pathway. Like sledding. If you take a sled down a slope, right, you ingrain the sled in that pathway. We're talking about having a ritual, examining what you want for your life, and forcing the sled down that pathway every day, multiple times a day, until your brain goes down that pathway automatically.
Exactly.
Right?
Epiphanies are very rare when people suddenly shift and they instantly make other decisions. But if you keep on picking a brick from the old castle that doesn't serve you anymore, and every day you have a practice of laying down that old brick on that new castle with your new beliefs, if you do that consistently, and that's what a practice or a habit is, a deliberate practice, then you will really be able to live in that castle, and you will be looking out at those ruins, and there will be no memory anymore of that past kingdom of yours, you know. But if you don't do it consistently, you know, like those bricks will keep on swapping from place to place, and that old castle will stay there.
For sure. Do you mind if I ask you what your ritual is? Do you have a way for putting yourself in certain states? What is your go-to move?
I have a morning ritual that I wake up, I do a cold shower. The day before, actually, my morning ritual starts by writing down the 3 most important things for the day. I unwind, write in a gratitude journal. I read in a fiction book, mostly like fantasy, to cultivate the non-rational, non-logical aspects of my brain. I dim the lights.
Wow.
I do something soothing, and then I go to bed, and then I listen to a fairy tale or I listen to binaural beats, and then I fall asleep. I get into that childlike, relaxing mode. And in the beginning of the day, I just want to prepare my fresh food, my fresh juice, cold shower, do like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then I start with the most important task. So that's what I do. And I preferably work in like 2 hours. I shut down certain technology during the day that I can't access it. I try to have at least like 1 point of exercise 5 times in the week. And optimally, I try to have one go with the flow day in the week that I can look forward to every week, that I don't have to look forward to the results in 3 months. And one maintenance day where I do like little maintenance tasks that aren't so important, but I just put them off the list. So those 2 days, I won't be disturbed by clients or other things. So go with the flow day and the maintenance day.
That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. I'm going to have to borrow that. Honestly, certain aspects of that are absolutely brilliant. That I like that one maintenance day, that would change my life around a lot. Because right now what I do is I'll have maintenance days that are not scheduled. So they'll happen when they have to happen, right? Whereas if I were to just say, Monday is the maintenance day, right? That would remove a lot of stress from
Yeah,
my life.
it's very one thing I forgot with my evening ritual is a shutdown complete time, that I should shut off my electronics and I stop working, because that's
Yeah,
also a lot of times with perfectionists or completionists who want to complete everything all the time. They
those
stay
dirty
up
bastards.
late and they sacrifice their sleep, and productivity wise is not the best choice to make.
Mhm.
Um, which habit did you want to take over again? The maintenance day is important, because if it's like clear, bright lines, then I'm going to do it, and it's clear which place, which day, and you don't have to worry about it anymore, then it will be done. But if there's not a fixed day, you have to decide when. You always find excuses or you put it off, and then
Yeah,
it's better to have boundaries about your schedule and your productivity. It makes it easier with room for freedom, flexibility, and some buffer days and meeting some friends, and
for
not only
sure.
working.
The other thing I thought was brilliant too is that you allow yourself to listen to these fantasies. That's the language of the subconscious mind. I mean, that's absolutely. I mean, that's very Jungian, Jordan Peterson type of. That's very cool. So,
Yeah,
bravo,
if
man.
if you're all the time in this very hectic analytical thinking mode, worrying, anxiety, I think it's good to go back to a place that's like very childlike, imaginative. That's also what we do in our sleep, right? So just
Yeah.
prepare for the sleep. And I mean, you can read Dostoevsky just before you go to sleep if you want to. It'll be a
Gee,
bit
no
more
way,
heavy
no
psychologically,
way.
or the Gulag Archipelago, but I would choose maybe some fantasy or something relaxing, or some
Yeah, I can't.
comic strips.
Dostoevsky, let's read Man's Search for Meaning right before you go to bed. Just like, oh man, that's rough. Well, that's awesome, man. So, the gratitude journal, is that something that's been useful for you?
Yeah, but I haven't been able to. I haven't chosen to do it consistently. I always try to implement habits sequentially and month by month. So I rather make a habit stick and then move on to the next one than overload myself. So it's not implemented enough, but it's one of my challenges, because each month I do like a habit challenge. When did
Okay.
you discover the power of habits, or when did you realize bad habits were impacting your life?
When I hit that low point, for sure. I think Tony Robbins said it's best is the results are a result of your rituals. That we are our habits, essentially, right? 100% we are our habits. And that, what you do on a regular basis that's also Batman, right? It's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me. And so getting in control, I mean, really tracking what are your behaviors that you're doing a lot of. I'll tell you exactly where you're going to be 5 years from now. I'll tell you what your marriage is going to be like. Show me your communication habits. I'll tell you what type of marriage you're going to have. Show me your rituals around your body. And the rituals you talk about food. People, if they habitually say, oh, I'm addicted to carbs. I'm addicted to carbohydrates. Really? You're addicted to spaghetti? You're gonna go out on the street and beg for spaghetti? Come on, take a break. Claim your language. Claim your language, like you did earlier when you said, I choose to do this, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
that I haven't been able, I choose to do this, right? Taking ownership of that language. For me, the morning ritual has been massive, 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 massive. There's nothing, and I'm just a different person without it. There's nothing like, so I do NLP morning rituals. I do a little bit of breath work. I do some Wim Hof. You familiar with Wim? Have you tried his breathing technique?
I have his course. It's one of the challenges also in
Is it really?
2018. Yeah.
So, yeah. I remember the cold shower challenge. That was fun, man.
Yeah,
I
man.
don't do it every day. But it snaps you into the present moment.
And
Like if
it's an
you,
example of what you talked before about doing something that maybe you don't feel like doing, but you're going to feel better afterwards. So it cultivates some willpower. And the more you make
yes.
it into a habit, the easier it becomes, or more comfortable it becomes.
Yeah, and I enjoy it now. I actually do enjoy it. Um, there's something about, so for me, becoming present is something that I really am enjoying doing more of, right? So there are various ways of becoming present. And the reason I like that one is because if I do traditional meditation, breathe in for 4, breathe out for 4, focus only on your breath, right? It takes me about 12 minutes to really drop into a really present, quiet state. That cold water when that hits me, I'm awake, man. I'm here. I'm not thinking about my problems, I'm totally present, So I really enjoy that. And then I do his breathing in there too. I do that, the 30 breaths. That's like Wim Hof style, right? So I try and do some form of breath work every day. So either Wim Hof breathing, I'll do meditation, or I'll do the breath of fire from yoga. That kind of fast, rapid inhale, exhalation, deep from the belly. And the challenge there is to allow my belly to move with that breath, right? Really opening up the musculature in the belly as it's going. That releases a lot of tension as well. And then it charges up the neurology, which is cool. The other thing that I do is I focus on my goals, and then I see myself achieving them over a 3-month period. I practice gratitude for those. The gratitude is absolutely amazing. And gratitude is one of those evidence-based things that science has shown. If you practice a gratitude journal, you get happier more than almost any other practice on earth, right? More than prayer, more than, I'll send you the chart if I can find it. And then NLP. So I love a swish pattern from NLP. I think that's a great, great practice. And I do some NLP state elicitation and anchoring. And then at that point, I'm ready to take on the day. And then I found sometimes strategically, if I'm doing something that's energetically demanding, that I need to stop throughout the day, program in a break, close my eyes, take a deep breath, shut off for a second, and just fill myself back up again, And that's been a really rewarding habit lately, is being able to schedule time throughout the day for myself to say, okay, you know what, if I want to be able to perform at a high level, I need to nourish myself at a high level too. And slowing down and turning things off, and then being like, cool, relax, let all the tension drain out of me, and then think about, what do I want for the rest of the day? That's been profoundly useful as well.
Yeah, I'm also sometimes neurotic with the planning and creating a structure, which is good, but it can become its own slave when you all the time have this structure that, you also want to be grateful and spend some time with friends and appreciate things, because self-development is about developing yourself, but it's also about developing yourself with others, which is also self-development. And it's also being grateful about the person you become, the intention you have, and what you achieve, because else you will never be fulfilled or be grateful about it. So yes, be productive. Yes, take charge, but also take some time to appreciate, because life goes by fast. You're improving, you're becoming a better person. But we all know this research about people, when they have more money or their life becomes more comfortable, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have more friends or more happy or more fulfilled.
Yeah, I was in a very low income neighborhood yesterday, and some of these people were the happiest people I've been around in a very long time. And I'm talking about abject poverty, just terrible. And these people, the smiles on their faces and the cheer in the way they would greet each other is far beyond anything that's going on in my neighborhood.
Do you have any reason why? I mean, okay, you have to have a basic level of income, of course. We're not going to say like, hey, if you're homeless or poor, you have a happy life. But why is it that sometimes people who have less money, they are more happy or more grateful or more fulfilled? I'm generalizing here, but sometimes you meet people who make half the money or even less, and they're much more smiley and happy. And
sure. Well, okay, so happiness is entirely in here. Happiness is entirely your belief system and the way you can do things happily. You know what I'm saying? You're the day where you do things that you have to do in the middle of the week, it's not what you're passionate about, but you can do it happily as an adverb. You know what I mean? It's a choice to live in the emotional states that you want to do that. And that's a practice, because you can't just by listening to this decide right now that I'm going to be happy, right? It takes practice. That when you find yourself focusing on bullshit, you have to stop it. And you have to step back and say, okay, what am I really grateful for right now? If I really wanted to be happy right now, what do I have to be happy about? What do I have to be grateful for? And the more you practice that type of thinking every single day, eventually it becomes automatic. These are tools that the mind learns to do automatically.
Yeah, and if you take responsibility and take action and you have something to be grateful about, it's not like you're delusional. You have some things to celebrate, but other things on your path, you worry sometimes, or you have a setback. And then I watched a video from a friend, Matt Gallant, for me yesterday, and he also had some bad luck in the week. And after everything that happened to him, he always said like, yeah, but it's not worth getting upset about.
No,
It's not worth getting upset about. Doesn't mean that it's not something you wish didn't happen, but what is the frustration actually going to change about it? It's not going to change your mindset or how you feel or create something positive.
Well, I remember T.I. Was getting sent to jail, right? He got a 1-year prison sentence, and he had a year before he had to go, the rapper, yeah? 1 year before he had to go to jail. And they were asking him, are you nervous? Are you stressed out about it? What's going on? You know, and he goes, no, 1 year in jail is enough. I'm not going to spend this year while I'm out of jail being in jail before I even get there. So yeah, that's kind of alludes to your point. Now, there was something you said earlier that I wanted to touch on too, but it just slipped my mind. Hopefully it'll come back to me here in a second. Well,
what do you think most people are looking for in life?
Whoa. I'm going to quote Joseph Campbell on that one. I think most people are looking for the experience of being alive. I couldn't presume to tell you what you're looking for. I certainly, one of the NLP approaches is I have no business telling you what success means to you. It's my job to ask you questions to help you answer them for yourself and act as kind of like a biofeedback machine, and to help you go deeper into that which you are. And the more I'm removed from my opinion of that, the better. So I'll generalize now. Having said that, I think for the most part, we're looking for connection. I think we're looking for meaning, significance. I think we're looking for fun, man. I think a lot of people are bored. And I think we're kind of numb. We're kind of numbed out. We're not tuned into each other. And that experience of being alive, it's worth it. It's, you know, when you're really alive, those moments when you've been totally there and in the thrill of life, that's what it's about. To me, 100% to me, that's what it's about. So
are you also somebody, I'm sometimes, I look at that to feel more alive, and I feel like, okay, I still have with a little bit of mourning, but also a bit of appreciation. And that yeah, man, this matters. If you measure things up now, even like it's not worth getting upset about compared to all the things that could happen to you, or that one day, even if you believe in the afterlife or not, this body or this experience will perish.
Every
it
day
puts
I
things
think
in perspective. Yeah.
Every day I think about my death. I think it's one of the most powerful meditations on there. And the other thing is, I think part of that experience of being alive is not tuning yourself out to the tragedy of life. I think I'm in a place now where I'm okay with the horrors of reality, and they're not bad to me, right? It's a part of this beautiful existence. And I think you need to stop. I think you need to tune into things and then be open to what's happening in the world, including the fact that one of these days will be your last. And so with the majority of my clients, we have that conversation on a regular basis. So when somebody's talking, I remember talking to one of my clients, and they really were holding themselves back from expressing themselves, for giving them permission to just go for it. And I do this process with them where we look back on a life of having lived that way and making you really talk about, what did I miss out by doing this? How much love, how much passion, how much success did I not experience by living this way? And then it snaps things into perspective real fast. You're kind of like, no, let's get after it now. You know, because in that moment, all of those excuses disappear. All of the fears, they're so irrelevant when you face your own mortality. All of your insecurities about rejection, about not being loved, all of those things disappear. And then now you don't care if you don't give it back, because the greatest gift was just giving that love, was giving that expression in the first place. Thinking about the fact that you're immortal allows you to have that realization, allows you to be able to give deeply.
Sometimes we're ungrateful bastards, right?
All the time.
We're just complaining about Wi-Fi, or that we're stuck in traffic, or that the plane is half an hour late. But if you look at like historically, or
Yes.
being able to have that experience, or be able to still do all those things that will maybe become increasingly more difficult once you age.
Yep.
We don't have the reaction to look at them and appreciate them. From an evolutionary standpoint, you can understand it. But sometimes I think like, what a kind of ungrateful asshole am I? You know?
100%, right? 100%. And I can laugh about it. So I can be an asshole, realize that I'm being an asshole and move on. And it's cool. Like I'm not perfect. I'm going to be ungrateful. I'm going to make those mistakes. And the faster I'm like, boom, on to the next one. Because when you laugh about it, you're immediately becoming grateful again. And I'm the same way, right? With the technology in particular. Like I'm looking at this cell phone here. Now I saw a video the other day. They put little motors in the cell phones and they're flying. So they have drone cell phones. So the selfies now take themselves. They fly, right? And they take themselves. We are living in by far the most marvelous time that's ever existed. And if you're not happy, I don't think you're paying attention. If you're not happy right now, if you don't think that you can become incredibly successful at anything, you're not paying attention. You have access to every genius that's ever come before you. Inside your mind, in between your ears, there are more neurons, was it stars in the galaxy or universe? But there's so many neural pathways going on inside you. More connectivity, more processing power than the most powerful computers, given the advancements in technology. I don't know how long that will last, right? Given the kind of exponential curve. But right now, your brain is still, your brain, anybody who's listening to this, your mind is still the most powerful thing on the planet. It's called human consciousness, right? You have the same neurology and physiology as Albert Einstein. You have the same neurology and physiology as Beyonce, okay? Find out what your gift is. Find out what your genius is. And just get in that mode of enjoying developing it, enjoying spreading it to people. Your life is going to be awesome.
And find out or create it, right? You can find something where people even think like, oh, Mozart, he was so talented, but still he was praying like crazy, and he was just doing deliberate practice and 10,000 hours or 15,000 hours. So it's not like suddenly I became gifted. It's also having the willpower and the consistency to develop a skill.
Yeah. Self-esteem through mastery is one of the things one of my mentors likes to say a lot. Mastery is an important process. Martial arts, that's why I came back to martial arts as an adult. You have to have some type of practice that teaches you about life. There's that book, I can't remember the name. He's a samurai, the Book of Five Rings. He says you can learn the way in one path. So you can, the way, essentially, if you can learn to be a samurai, you can learn to do anything. And the same thing is true. If you can learn to be exquisite at video games, you can be exquisite at anything. And so developing mastery. So find something that you want to be masterful at and then go after it. Is it public speaking? Is it coaching? Is it developing people? Is it teaching? What? I don't know. What is something that if you were absolutely exquisite at that, you would feel so proud of yourself, would fulfill you, you know? And then start, because if you read The Alchemist?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great book, man. He said, every moment's search for your heart's treasure is a moment's encounter with God.
And he says, when you're on your path, the universe will conspire to help you.
Yes. So have a little bit of faith and just take that step. It's okay. If not, go do the secure option if you have to, but you might as well like go after what you want. You don't want to spend 40, 50 years in a career that doesn't fulfill you. You know, that's not living. That's not every single day doing something you don't like. That's a form of slavery. Why would you do that to yourself? And we're living in a world that encourages you to be a sheep.
What is something you don't believe now anymore that you used to believe in the past?
Santa Claus.
He doesn't live? Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. Santa Claus is not real, bro. I looked it up. I stood up, I waited for him. Actually, I was hungry and I wanted one of the cookies, you know? And so I went downstairs, and I waited, and there was no Santa Claus, man.
Talk about beliefs being shattered. Is there anything you believe that other people would think is crazy, but you believe is true?
I'm sure there are lots of things that I believe are crazy that yes. I think people are largely skeptical of hypnosis in the first place, largely because it's treated like a magic trick, right? And so people see it and they see people respond intensely to suggestions. And I think the ego flares up a little bit because nobody wants to be controlled. Mm-hmm. And there's actually a fair amount of research on this, is that people will not do something that they do not want to do in hypnosis. There is a fair amount of research on that. And actually, I saw a brilliant demonstration. This guy came to I want to say a real estate sales seminar. He was a hypnotist. Brought about 5-10 people on stage and hypnotized this guy, put him into a deep trance. And this guy is sitting on stage. He has complete catalepsy in his arm, right? Catalepsy is a hypnotic phenomenon and a deepener. So the guy's sitting there. His arm is stiff. He's completely unconscious. And somebody from the audience goes, "He owes me $100. Make him give me $100. And he instantly steps up out of the trance and goes, he curses at the guy. He's like, "You, Bill, I do not owe you $100. Okay? Sits back down and goes right back into trance. And you can find this on YouTube. The mistake that people make is that your subconscious mind protects you. It's been protecting you your whole life. And so I think people are a little bit, they have misconceptions about hypnosis. I get interesting reactions to it when I tell
What are the
people.
misconceptions you feel people have about hypnosis?
Well, that it's mind control, for example. They think that they can't go into a trance. They think that, and they just don't know what it is. They don't know that when you go into hypnosis, you can access any state of consciousness on the planet. You can relive times when you were drunk and feel it fully. You can access a state of bliss and turn it up. There, you have more control over your neurology. And I think that's why I do the work, is because it's my job to teach people that they can do this. To be honest with you, I don't want to be a hypnotist. I want to be a self-hypnosis coach. I want people to learn how to do these things for themselves. I want people to understand that you can put a lever on nirvana and crank that bad boy up to a level 10 and then add a little bit of ecstasy to it. And then when your skin starts to glow, people are going to start to respond to you in a new way. You know, state is another one. In the right state of consciousness, your beliefs change. Have you ever been in a state where you felt absolutely unstoppable?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Of course. And in that moment, your beliefs about what were possible were different too. In that moment, you could do things that you couldn't do, right? Being able to access and change and control your neurology is your birthright as a human being. And so I think that's the misconception. It's not that hypnosis is magic and that I went to hypnosis school, so they gave me magical powers and now I know the magical words. It's that your brain is magic. Your mind is magic. And your mind can do incredible things to create experience, to create success, to create love, passion. What do you want? Design it in your mind. Your mind will help you to act in ways. And the curious thing is, the world itself changes around you. I don't know what it is, but I mean, the literature.
It's a bit like the law of attraction, right? That people act sometimes the way towards you, how you act towards yourself. And when you start improving your beliefs, then the reality around you also starts restructuring itself.
Yes. Yes. So the law of attraction, you know, I like to say attraction without action ain't satisfaction. So that's some of my problem with the law of attraction, is that they don't talk about the principle of right action and taking the action. But yeah, exactly. And that's in the psychological literature, that what you believe to be true affects your behavior, affects what you notice in the environment. Let's go back to my earlier example. Somebody has a belief about how somebody's going to respond to them, then that person smiles at them. Depending on their belief system, that's either a positive smile or a sneer, and they're laughing at them, right? And then that feeds back into your psychology. So I think the misconception is that you're doing hypnosis to yourself every day when you have automatic thinking habits. Your automatic thoughts that go on, that's self-hypnosis. That's auto-suggestion, right? When you think that thought that I have to be motivated to do X, Y, Z, that's a command to your neurology to go inside and say, do I feel motivated right now? What are the criteria for me to be motivated? And it's a Boolean answer, yes or no. Therefore, I can or cannot do this activity, right? And the truth is, you don't have to be motivated to do it. Well, yes, you do have, because for sure, but not like not inspired type of motivation. If somebody put a gun to your head and said, do it, you would do it. You just need to do the activity to do it, right?
Another friend of mine, he had an interesting discussion about NLP. He used to go to NLP like 10 years ago. And he understands NLP also going from unconsciously incompetent to consciously unconsciously competent. But he asked the question, he also teaches people to come from the heart and really like intuition. When with NLP can you drop this? Because it sometimes seems like you act a bit like a rational routine robot. I'm exaggerating right now, but where does the heart has its proper place and like emotions in NLP, or how do you deal with it that you don't want to structure every part of your reality and micromanage it, right? So how do you find the balance?
Okay, so thank you for asking that. That's one of my biggest problems when I learned NLP, is that it's a very structural approach to the
Mm-hmm.
mind. And treating people like robots is not the answer, and treating yourself like a robot is not the answer either. I think Michael Breen is the NLP trainer who made that clear for me. Yeah, no, it's absolutely about coming from the heart. And uh, for me, it's just being very clear about what my intention is. And so I have my morning ritual and I have my evening ritual. And then for the rest of the day, I'm going to trust in my intuition and my unconscious to do the rest for me. And I notice what worked and what didn't go well. And that gets incorporated into my ritual for that night and the next day. And then holding that intention and then coming from the heart. And that's another practice.
Yeah, because um, in the past, I used to be into seduction and pickup, etc. And there you also have these routines and things that you say. But what happened with people who were like what they call outer game was they were so much in their head, they never really were present or authentic with somebody else, or let go because they analyzed everything. And especially in seduction or social relationships, of course you want to learn, of course you want to get outside of your social comfort zone, but you don't want to treat people like structures that you can dissect and analyze everything, because oftentimes with other people, being present, coming from the heart, caring about them, and not always analyzing and structuring things can really create a bigger connection with people.
That's what you want. That's what people need. Being present and connecting, that's the answer. And so a lot of that community and the marketing around seduction material and the frame, the beliefs within the seduction material, they're designed for the presupposition about those things are: you're not lovable without a certain technique. You're not
Mm-hmm.
worthy of love without a certain technique. If you don't say the right thing, do the right thing, you're not worthy of that connection. Right? That belief system is inherently not designed to do it, but will inherently make it so. No technique will work for you. So the techniques are great, right? Learning to be a better communicator is a phenomenal thing to do. Everyone should do it. Everyone should learn to communicate better. And you gotta start with the right psychology of it, that if your communication is to get something out of somebody instead of give something to somebody, you're only going to go so far. If you're developing your communication skills to enrich your relationships, that's the type of goal that's going to enrich your relationships. If you're trying to seduce somebody,
Mm-hmm.
then depending on what your beliefs are about seduction, that may or may not be a good thing. Depending on what your beliefs are about what that means for them, right? That may or may not be a good thing. But yeah, I'm familiar with the seduction community. I've
Yeah,
read a lot.
because you could look at this as also NLP and dividing it, and I say this, then she react this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to touch her here, then I'm going to say this. And it's almost like a robot kind of attraction. Now, for somebody, especially me, I was a very late bloomer. I had to learn some place. I had to have something to work with, but to discover my true self. But some
Yes.
people depend so much on those routines and that material and that structure that as soon as that structure falls away, which inherently happens in relationships or when you go deeper, those fall off.
Right.
You express your genuine personality and the lack
What
of,
genuine personality?
yeah, that is all
Because you
the
haven't even developed.
the fear and anxiety and lack of self-worth that's underneath, and then he or she gets rejected and bam, they're collecting new material, but the material is not there
Right.
as a permanent strategy.
Yeah, no, for sure. The material can only get you so far, right? And I think recognizing that just your presence is a gift. And one of the things that you said that I liked is you started there as a place to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think right now in the media, especially, you're seeing a lot of unhealthy masculinity, a lot of unhealthy femininity. I mean, there's just we're getting to a place where we don't know how to communicate with each other anymore. And as a man, let me just speak as a man,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't really know what it's like for women. We don't have a lot of resources for what it means. I mean, who sat you down and said, this is how you communicate with a woman. This is how you express attraction for a woman.
Mm.
This is what you do when she doesn't like you back. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
how many people talk to you about this? How many people told you how to deal with rejection and embrace it and accept it and allow yourself to love the rejection? Like, love the fact that you don't have, you know what I mean? You can still enjoy her without needing her. Do you know what I mean? Nobody is teaching us these things. So yeah, it's a skill to be able to meet somebody new. Learn the skill for sure. You know, learn the better skills. Learn the better skills about relating with people. Learn the better skills about dropping your defenses and being present with people. Fuck it. Be vulnerable. Put yourself out there. Drop all the routines. Just because you are worthy, and step into the fear of not knowing and allow it to happen and be totally okay with it. You know, it's all fun, man. It's all a good time. You know?
Yeah, it's all a journey. I think some people need to discover some things, and it goes from openness to like rigidity, and too much openness is chaos, and you can't structure it and you can't grasp reality. There's no context and no framework. But if everything is just a framework and just structure without openness and flexibility, it's also very strict and rigid, and you won't be able to grow a lot, So it's kind of like a spectrum and a dance between those poles, and any extremes of these poles will not function. It will be a one-trick pony kind of strategy.
Very much so.
A lot more. Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of value in going to the extreme temporarily as a learning. But yes, I'm with you 100%. Look at conservatism and liberalism. I mean, in politics, these are two aspects that need each other.
Mm-hmm.
They need each other. Conservatism and liberalism need each other. Right now, you're seeing the darkest sides of liberalism and the darkest sides of conservatism.
Mm-hmm.
Just some really ugly stuff. People are forgetting that there's good conservatives, that there's good liberals, and all we're focusing on is the negative. You need for sure both ends of the spectrum. But for me, there was profound learning in getting that rigidity, and there was profound learning in going into complete openness and just weeping and bawling and being totally vulnerable. There's a lot to learn at the extremes. And
that's what Aristotle said. If you want to move into the middle and you go from one extreme to the other extreme and then find the virtuous mean. And for me, who's like a black and white person and all or nothing, sometimes I have to go to the other extreme to find a bit the dynamic balance. I find it hard to do something moderately.
I feel you. I'm with you on that. I'm the same way. So
yeah, and in this, I don't try to delve much into politics, although it's mostly about me, about freedom of speech, taking responsibility, making sure that people have as much chances to advance in life as they can. And if I talk with people, where it always starts is taking responsibility for your position, maybe talking for people who are a victim or a part of yourself as victim, but identifying as a victim and staying stuck in this position, it's never going to help anyone. On the left and on the conservative or on the right, if you just blame the opponent and everything is their responsibility and you're not willing to listen to them and you're not willing to look at your own position and how you can contribute, there's not going to be a constructive solution. And we're at a point in society where people are so identified with that anti-mentality that they're just digging in their own trenches, and they stay stuck, and there's no communication, just blaming, and no meaningful interaction, discussion, or understanding each other's viewpoint. Even if the viewpoint is not correct, just being exposed to the market, exchanging ideas, exchanging arguments, knowing how people think, letting freedom of speech and debate run its course. This is super valuable for me, for both sides.
I don't think you really understand your position until you can defend the opposite position. If you can't make an argument for their side, you don't know what you're talking about. And you don't have any business arguing with somebody about it until you can make their argument. If you can't do that, then have you really thought about it deeply? Probably not,
Yeah, so. Because it's nothing to do with my channel, but I also have presentations about cultural Marxism, etc. And I made presentations about it. But I first asked myself also the question, like, what was initially their intentions? If they were really trying to have a good intention, what did they want to do? Because it's easy to say, like, yeah, it's just a bunch of men or women with lab coats pondering how to take over the world, and they're all evil, just as we do with any person. But just understanding that this was their intention, this is how it has evolved during history. Now we can revise it, and not vilifying and demonizing other people will actually benefit you more. And people if they don't agree with you, at least they see how a good thing can maybe become a perverted thing when you take it to the extreme, but they don't feel attacked because they see the spectrum of that position, you know?
So can we be the change that we want to see in the world right now? Would that be something you're open to? Is if I were to take your advice, taking ownership and being more responsible for something, I'm just trying to think of what's something that I could apply right now from this conversation. And I'm sure, if I'm being honest, there's probably an area in my life where I could take more responsibility. So would that be something you'd be open to doing, is using this conversation as a jumping off point for that?
Yeah, the reason why I focus on habits is I can have all this outrage to the world about what you can do and how you are a victim, but there are little wins that you can have with your habits, with taking responsibility, having enough energy, have enough place, have enough freedom, have enough money to make a bigger impact and stand up for people. I mean, Martin Luther King even said we have a free society when people are judged by the content of their character instead of the color of their skin. And it
Right.
seems in some places we're back to the color of the skin. No, create chances for people, work on yourself first, build yourself up, have a good foundation, start with your habits, and start from that firm foundation. So that's why I always want to stress, like, there is some change possible with your habits, with yourself, with your thinking, with the people who you influence, so we can make a bigger impact. But build your kingdom with those little habit bricks, brick by brick, you know, and then you will have a kingdom to rule and you will have some influence. Else your life will be in ruins, and nobody's going to build a kingdom from ruins, you know.
Sure. Absolutely. I love it, man. Absolutely love it. I have a feeling that there's this kind of exposure that's been happening in the media right now about the kind of the negative, uglier signs. I think we're on the verge of something, man. I think we're on the verge of the internet just exposing what we are. And at some point we're going to say, okay, I get it. This is what a human being is. But this is what we're capable of. And I think as ugly as the communication styles have become on the internet, I'm very optimistic that we're going to figure this out. I think it's so new. We don't really know how to do it yet, but all this stuff is coming to light, not because it's getting worse, in my opinion. I think it's just there, and we're finding the recesses of all the things that we don't like anymore. And we just might be able to evolve from that. Like a real consciousness shift or evolution might be possible. And it starts by what you were talking about at the beginning, which was, how can you go somewhere if you don't know where you are, right? So it's an interesting time. Very, very optimistic. And
yeah, I still haven't decided my position on it, but at least more and more sources of awareness are there for people to check out besides the mainstream media. So people can check out the red pill or other things, or on both sides as much as they want, without the traditional media or having to go to the library like in the past, you know. One thing, of course, is everybody has ghosts in the closet. Nobody is perfect. We all can pretend to be the perfect human being on Facebook, but when somebody is sending like a naughty SMS to someone, and then like, look what this guy sent me, or look what this person did. I mean, a lot of guys already did that, and we're human. Not saying that it's maybe inappropriate, but we don't try to be all saints online. And everybody has some negative aspects that maybe we don't like to talk about. So let's hope not to forget the humanness that we have, and not just that avatar of ourselves that's being presented and judged all the time.
Drop the pretense, okay? Drop the pretense. Like, you know, you've done some shit too. You know you've done some shit, okay? There's some skeletons in your closet, and everybody has that. And let's get honest about sexuality. Let's get honest about relationships, so that these things don't have to like come up the way they do. You know, they're coming up because we don't know how to communicate this. There are so many people who are lonely. They're so lonely, and they get a couple beers in them. I don't know. I'll send her a picture of my dick. It's not the best strategy. It's just, I mean, honestly, I feel bad. I feel bad for that strategy, you know? So there's a consciousness evolution that's happening when people like yourself are out there helping people with habits, you know?
And again, here, like for instance, what you said, when you look at this from mutual responsibility, the guy who sent that, you know, like, it's inappropriate, you know? So if a girl would say like, this is inappropriate, it's inappropriate. But we also got to look at the other side that's being talked about what men are facing and what men are being rejected. I'm not saying by sending this, but in general, it's also painful to be rejected, because they take a chance and they They want to see if the girl maybe is interested, and then,
Yep.
you know, she ignores him, and that's painful, sometimes even more painful than physical pain, you know. So just taking that chance in the unfamiliar ground, the same thing what we talked about in the beginning of the call, with inviting a girl to dance, inviting her into your world, and then being rejected. If you don't have that self-worth or self-esteem, that can be really painful. You feel your whole sense of identity is crumbling down by that rejection, you know. So it's all not too fantastic and rosy for men also in the seduction in the society, you know.
Rosie, and it's incredibly difficult for men right now. It's so hard for guys. There's so little mental, emotional resources for men out there. And they're not, in my opinion, I don't know about this for sure, but in my opinion, women are better at relating. They're better at communicating. Not all the time, but, you know, I think men are more sensitive than they let on, or that, you know, the gender norms would allow us to be. And so last night we were here in my apartment with a group of us that did that charity event I was telling you about. We're sitting around and we're talking about these things. And one of the women that was there, she said, I cannot believe that this is what guys talk about. You guys are talking about these like vulnerable issues. You guys are going deep. You're talking about your emotions. I said, I think guys are craving this and they're not having an opportunity to do it. And then we became guys again, and we started, you know, being guys. But we do, you know, there is that need for everybody to have those type of conversations. And I think we're getting there.
And there's a double-edged sword, because we need it. We don't have the social network, and we're not so open and vulnerable about it. But sometimes when we are open and vulnerable about it, society and women or relationships still expect us to be like a performance or like a human doing instead of a human being, you know. So I think there's immense value in being vulnerable and being authentic. I just finished a book by Louis Hose, The Master of Masculinity, where he talks about the different masks of men, the stoic mask, the athlete mask, the aggressive mask.
That's the second time I've heard that book. Did you like it?
Yeah, I liked it because, you know, I hate cultural Marxism and when people only focused on victim and the other are the perpetrators, but it's really a book about just the masks of men and what they can learn from it. It's not, sometimes the solution seems to be just be like a woman as a man, and then you have all the good aspects. But, you know, you have good women, you have bad women, but it's really an authentic book about the masks sometimes we put on with sports, or being aggressive or being invincible, or alpha, etc. Like that, it's just a facade, and underneath is actually something you want to express. And it's a call for both men and women to be more open and share and express, you know. So it's an interesting book to read. Yeah,
that sounds awesome. I'll pick that up.
Now, before I delve into the concluding questions, is there anything that you would still like to talk about or share that we haven't talked about? I know we could talk for hours. I think
we could go deep for hours, man. We could do a whole podcast about our favorite podcasts, you know?
Yeah.
Service. I think service, recently I was smashed in the face with just how much giving back to the community was missing from my life. And that fulfilled me on a level which I think the myth, you alluded to this earlier, is that, you know, we focus on personal development, but it's also about connecting with other people. I think personal development is a misnomer. I think that's a myth. You don't grow in a vacuum. All of the stages of most of my growth have been in relationship or in a community. And so I had this opportunity to give back in a really big way recently. And I mean big way in terms of how it impacted me. I think relatively speaking, you know, we influenced probably the community in a minor way, but it was huge to be able to go into that community and do a little bit of good. I think we're disconnected from that. And what that gave me is profound beyond words, And I would encourage anybody that if there is something that you could feel good about making a difference in somebody else's life, if you like animals and you want to do something for animals, you would be surprised about what that can do for you by giving back.
Yeah, and it's also the people I'm mostly interested in, because one of the things that entrepreneurs and coaches struggle a lot with is like solitude or isolation, that they feel isolated and they're a bit lonely, you know. So if you can connect with people, and have these social relationships, and then make it not just about you, but about something bigger than you and make an impact in the world, That will really give a good feeling, man. I don't realize. If people want to buy a super big mansion, that costs like $5 million, that's fine if they want to do it. But in a lot of cases, it's just a bigger house to be lonely in.
Yeah, no, do it. Get the house, get the car, do all that. That's cool. I plan on it too. I have a certain car I'm after. Don't get me wrong. That's not going to make you happy. It's going to be a nice car. It's not going to make you happy. But yeah, that's the only thing that I would add as well.
If you would invite people to check out some mentors, some resources, some books that really influenced you, or you would invite people to check out, what are some resources you would invite people to read?
Okay. I think absolutely everybody should learn NLP, and not just learn it. I think they should learn it from Richard Bandler. And I think they should, I think everybody should understand state elicitation, spinning, emotional feelings. I think everybody should learn to change their beliefs. So I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins because I think he made NLP digestible. But for me, it is really about NLP and hypnosis. To me, these two skills are absolutely fundamental, and they've been given other names in terms of subconscious learning. So for me, I would encourage people to read Richard Bandler, attend his seminars. When I have my seminars, you attend mine, but work with people. Just find your mentors, For me, those guys do it because they resonate with me. But figure out your direction. Joseph Campbell is a big one. I mean, but really more than specific people, develop a lust for learning. Develop a lust for learning so that you are the person who's growing on a regular basis. Find that curiosity within yourself to constantly be pushing. It's not a coincidence that 80% of the people Tim Ferriss interviewed in his book, The Habits of Billionaires, Icons, etc., high performers, 80% of them have a morning ritual. 80%. That's not a coincidence. Okay? It's not a coincidence that Warren Buffett, all these guys talk about reading. It's not a coincidence. So I think my answer to that would be get really curious about it for yourself. Find out who your mentors are, who resonate for you. And, it's about your life. And then if you think NLP is cool, go after NLP. Richard Bandler, study with all of them. Study from all of them and learn what works, But that's my path. I have a set of tools. They're the ones that I like the best, and they're the ones that help me work with people the best. For some people, it's mindfulness. For some people, it's a hug. Find what works for you and find and cultivate your path.
What's something people would be surprised to find out about you?
I'm a ninja. I don't know.
Is that something that people think of you, but when you really are honest, it's actually different?
I'm socially anxious. So most of my current friends don't know that about me. So when I tell them that, they said, you're very outgoing, you're very extroverted, you're the life of the party, you speak in public. We would have never guessed that about you. And I don't like that label either. Mm-hmm. So I'm socially anxious is not how I think about it. I think about it as sometimes I still do the activity of being socially anxious. I still think in those ways sometimes. Mm-hmm. But for the most part now, I'm thinking in much more useful ways. So people are often surprised to find out that I really struggled with it for a long time. I had a very hard time getting out of the house, because of it. So people are often surprised to find that.
If I talk about a meaningful and fulfilling life, what is a meaningful and fulfilling life for you?
Passion, passionate relationships, giving back on a massive scale. I want to transform this planet in a positive way. And excellence. I'm very fascinated by excellence. So I want to be very good at what I do. I want to give back on a massive level, and I want to create a lot of passion in my life, and I want to really have fun. I want to laugh a lot, and I want to live this thing full out, full tilt.
And what are you most excited about right now?
Everything. I have never been more excited in my life. I know you've probably been on this journey for some time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, more than 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So when all of this personal development really starts to catalyze and the world around you starts to change, and it's kind of weird at first because you start to change your beliefs, and then the world starts changing, and you're like, I'm in a very, very good place right now. My clients are incredible people, and they're doing incredible things. I admire them for a lot of the things they're doing. And so I'm just blessed, man. And I'm loving life. I'm really excited about the next step too. Like I'm thinking about my NLP online product and how to make it easy for people to learn this stuff from home. So that's my passion right now, that I'm figuring out how to film and piece it together and create the most usable NLP product that actually gets people to sit down and use it. Because if you study these personal development products, I think about 2% of people, a statistic I heard, about 2% will buy a program and then use it. So I'm trying to find a way to make it easy, fun, and get people to actually use the system. So that's what I'm excited about right now.
Yeah, for all people, self-help is shelf-help. I want to take a second to appreciate you for waking up this early and putting so much enthusiasm and energy into what you're doing, showing people that if they can envision what they want to be, that they can take action, take steps, change their beliefs. Thanks so much for being a guest on this podcast. If people want to check out more about May the Schwartz be with you, if they want to check out more about what you're doing, your future courses, and they want to reach out, where can they find out more about you?
They can go to hypnotherapete.com, 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 as well as my Facebook page, My Highest Potential, or find me on Facebook, facebook.com/DJ Pete.
Thanks, Peter. Have a lovely day, man.
Thank you so much, man. This was awesome. I appreciate it.
Hey, it's Phil from Habit Bootcamps, and I help entrepreneurs and coaches achieve more in less time by boosting their productivity and sales. If you would like to get on a free consultation call with me, you should go to habitbootcamps.com/getproductive or habitbootcamps.com/getsales. And if you like this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and check out my Habit Bootcamps YouTube channel and Facebook group for some more awesome content.